Did you know that in 1985 it took about 4 cold calls to reach a prospect? And now it takes about 18. 85% of the C-level executives still prefer face-to-face meetings. But do you know that about 75% of the B2B sales meetings and calls happen over Zoom, basically virtual platforms? Many of us have worked on the BAND framework, the Challenger sales framework, and now we are living in an era of AI-guided selling. Most of the enterprises work on a tech stack of about 32 sales tools. But do you know that there has only been an improvement of 1% in the sales close rate in the last decade? And let me give you another startling statistic. About 57% of sales professionals have not achieved their sales quota last year. Welcome to the fascinating paradox of modern enterprise tech sales, where probably the fundamentals still remain similar, but everything else is transformed. Hello, I'm Sandeep Sharma, Vice President Marketing and Business Development at Visagos, a Gen AI powered low code application development platform company. It's my pleasure to host yet another episode of the Visor Talk. Today, I have the pleasure and privilege to host for the Visor Talk Mr. George Thomas. He is a sales veteran with over 30 years of experience. He has been a country leader for various MNC tech companies, including NetApp, TIPCO, and Western Digital. Hello, George. Welcome to the podcast. It's a delight to have you on the podcast as a guest.
Yeah, thank you. Today? Very well, Sandeep. And thank you for having me on the show.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, George, when we have you on the podcast, today we will attempt to peel the layers of modern tech enterprise sales. We will try to understand the entire process through your experience, starting from lead generation to how do you design a perfect sales call to how do you close a deal.
Sure.
So let us first of all start with your illustrious career in the tech world. So I think you are a sales veteran and you have led many MNC tech companies as well.
Right.
So it would be great for the audience to understand, a background of your career.
Sure. So I have almost 30 years experience in sales and sales management, and primarily in enterprise sales. So I started my career in early stage Indian IT companies. And in 2000, I became the country manager of NetApp. Almost 25 years, 24 years as a country manager in various companies, startups as well as large companies.
George, to begin with, for the audience, let me just put the right context about the entire sales discovery process. So,
right.
Could you help the audience understand the entire tech sales process?
Sales process, okay. The sales process starts with the go-to-market strategy.
Okay.
Right. I mean, which is the vertical you're targeting, which geographies you're targeting, what are the use cases you're targeting, right? So, and for that, how do you approach the market? Is it a direct sales? Is it inside sales? Is it a channel? So that is a starting point for the conversation.
So just to interrupt, so for the audience, the GTM strategy is you have a certain solution or a product or a service. How do you take that solution to the market in terms of?
What are the routes to market?
What are the
routes to market? Which are the verticals you for instance you choose to focus on?
Correct.
And so that is first step.
Okay.
And once that is done, of course, the sales process kicks in, right? So the first step is the lead generation. As we talked, lead generation. Initial days were all cold calling, and today we have a lot of opportunities for finding out more information about the customer verticals. And then you have marketing events, and inside sales is definitely one of the processes today to especially when you are getting a lead from your search engine optimization process, getting from the inbound leads. Those things can be handled by the inside sales.
Okay.
So that's first step. Inside sales, marketing, Rolodex networks.
Okay.
How you find the leads. The most important, I would say, is the qualification.
Okay.
Qualification, we talk about a process called the BANT.
Okay.
I'm using an acronym. It is just an acronym, but I think it is very relevant, and this will ensure that you can track over the period of your sales process what's going on and what is. So first is the budget. I mean, naturally, you're going after a customer who has the budget.
Yeah.
Budget in a different way. So budget, maybe for the project is allocated or not, you may not get an answer immediately, but that's your goal to find out. First of all, the company has a budget. Secondly, is this project a important thing for them to spend money on?
Right.
And second most important part is the authority of the person or the people you're calling on. Most of the time you land somebody who's speaking very nicely to you. You go to him and is comfortable with you and him. You're with him, but that is where it breaks. And when you go to the decision process, finally, there is no leverage there, right? So authority, who are the people involved in a decision making process, that you should know upfront. Again, it's a process. You may not know in the first call, but this is your goal to find out. And second, and the need is not just a need. The need is whether your product or solution can match the customer's requirement.
Okay.
Are you a technical fit? Okay. So you need to qualify that, whether all relationship apart, there should be a outcome which is for the customer, which he wants to have.
So when we say need, is it more related to painkiller versus vitamin concept?
Painkiller versus steroid, you can say, but yeah, that's different. Companies have different approaches. Sometimes they have a problem, they want to immediately solve it. But you are saying, like in the case of the e-commerce company I was talking about, they wanted to put it on steroids. They want to boost up the performance, 10x or 20x.
Okay.
Either ways, we should qualify the technical fitment. Is our company product able to deliver that?
Okay.
Correct. So that's the third part. And again, as you see, as I said, in Salesforce, there's a lot of undecided things. It's a timeline. Can we get a sense of the timeline?
Okay.
Again, this is easier said than done, but unless you have these four lined up, there is less likelihood of you getting a purchase order in a particular quarter. That's today we are looking at time bound, right? So
yes,
I think that's very important to qualify the needs. Generally, I recommend that you have a documented POC after that, wherein you again don't jump into the POCs because you want to do something about it, but once you document it, the success criteria defined, I think POC is next process, typically in large companies, especially for startups. I would say you have to prove your capabilities.
Yeah.
And of course, then it's a matter of your proposal, and again, the pricing we discussed, whatever, tailor-made to the customer's requirement. And I think that's
finally
closing the deal. So if you know these things upfront, it will help you, have a strategy to negotiate and close as well. And if you do those things correctly, there's. So there is nothing. I mean, it's a standard for ages, but we have to rigorously follow this process. Especially, I'm talking again about qualification. Qualify. That's very important.
Okay. So George, one of the first questions that every salesperson or every marketer in that sense has on top of his or her mind is lead generation. So in your career spanning over 30 years now, what is your approach to lead generation? What has been your approach to lead generation? How was it different back then and how is it different now? Can you share your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences as well. So the lead generation initially was through, we were given a territory as a sales, thing. And we were supposed to develop our contacts in that territory and take it from there. In the past 20 years, I would say, or 15 years, there's a lot of digital initiatives. And so we have a lot more information available on the web, on LinkedIn and other channels. And also the marketing events gives you a lot of leads. So pretty much the same in terms of lead generation, but the channels are different and you can have more granular data today from various channels, which will help you to have more qualification of the accounts.
But do you think that lead generation is still fine, but the whole approach to qualification, I think that has become much more difficult.
Right. So qualification, we have, as you said, we have more channels to do that. Pre-call research, maybe we can go into that.
Yeah.
And so pre-call research today is very important. You don't go in there as a stranger. You can do a lot of analysis based on your company, the industry the customer is into, the competition, and then you can tailor make your discussions based on that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Would you like to talk? I think the concept of Rolodex was quite popular
Right.
back in those days.
Yeah. Right.
Would you like to explain more about that concept?
Right. So the Rolodex, if you to explain Rolodex a bit, it's that circular thing you see on our desks earlier, right? Which had the customer names and the companies and all that. And it's mostly an indexing and searching type of thing. You can figure out, you can call people. And Rolodex network has a different meaning. I mean, over time, that's your asset. You build it over time, and then you know them, you know the customer. You can pick up the phone and talk to them, right? The network part remains the same, I would say, because that's your asset, as you say. There's a discussion. You generally go and meet a person and you exchange business cards. That is the difference, and that's part of your Rolodex. That has changed. Today, you don't keep it in a Rolodex in a particular place. You may have channels like LinkedIn, Sales Navigator. Let's say you can form account lists. You can so indexing is easier. Indexing, searching. You can do lead list. One of the things I think is working very well is you look at a quarterly plan from your Rolodex network or whatever network the data you have, and you choose around 20 top accounts, 20 top contacts, I would say,
Okay.
which you will focus on in that particular quarter. The two things: one is that network is to be developed. There's no substitute for that. And second thing is, how do you approach that network?
Okay.
Right? How do you keep in touch with them? So have a strategy to follow up on. Make a plan that this is my quarterly plan, and I would like to approach 20 of them. Make a close relationship with.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've touched upon the network concept, 20 accounts that you need to reach out into in a quarter.
In a quarter, yeah.
And then you need to do a pre-call or a pre-meeting research.
Yes.
I think you briefly touched upon that.
Yeah. The pre-call research, the more prepared you are, you can make a better conversation. I also want to point out that today the products we have are more differentiated, and so it's more focused. Unlike the earlier days when I mentioned earlier that we had a territory and go out, but today you're focusing on a particular. You do more segmentation, targeting, right? So you learn about the industry they're doing, the use cases specifically, and you can dig into your company internal references and see what is the type of customers, the similar customers, what are they doing with our technology, right? And also have, if possible, try to find out if there are any references of that company or that person in your Rolodex network or other networks.
Okay.
And find out from them, the industry, the business they are into, your competition, if possible, what are they currently using. As much as information is always better to deliver a good
Sure.
conversation.
So George, till now we have covered about lead generation. We have talked about pre-call research activity. Now let me also take your views on a very, very important topic. So I, as a salesperson, I'm always, baffled by what should be a perfect sales call.
Right.
So what, in your opinion, should be a perfect sales
Right.
call? Please give some examples as well.
Correct. So I think this is we have to demystify the whole thing. It is, but there are certain structures to this, right? Number one is I call, if you can map it to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Okay.
You can do it in a sales call. I mean, this is a very fundamental thing, but at the basic level, the physical level, you should be well dressed, presentable. This is a given, right?
Right.
At the next level, you should be mentally prepared. I'm mentally calm, outwardly confident. The customer sees that. So this thing you should practice. I mean, in any call, you should do these two things: first step and one and two. Many people do this well, but the most important thing is, again, that is where the pre-call research, etc., comes to be. So you have to show your competence. You should be showing up as prepared for the call, right? You should have the correct presentation. You should be having an agenda, and so which shows that you're competent. Your customer, you're there to tell the customer, you are able to give him a solution. If you establish it to that level, the sales call is pretty much established, right? After that, you can go to the next steps of a problem solving type of thing. But the relationship angle, the 3 steps where you're there physically, mentally, and also you're prepared for the call. You're competent. You know what you're talking about. You came here to you help the customer meet his requirements. I think that's very fundamental, and you should always have that in mind when you go for a sales call.
Do you think that these calls have slightly changed in the era of Zoom, or the fundamental principles remain almost similar? Are there any additional considerations that a salesperson needs to have in a typical virtual environment?
I think virtual environment and physical environment, there is not too much of a difference. However, I would say that when you go for a call, there should be an agenda before the call. So many a time you show up and there may be a mismatch of expectations. So when you're having probably you send an email before the call detailing the agenda.
Those are very valuable insights, George. In fact, every salesperson should heed those considerations. Do you think that there are any other considerations in a sales call that the salesperson
Right,
should
right.
really heed to?
I think one of the thing is that you should have a minimum outcome of the call.
Okay.
In any call, you should have in your mind a minimum outcome expectation.
Right.
It could be a meeting with a larger team to discuss for the proposal. It could be a demo. It could be a PO if it's all good. But one should have a minimum expectation of the call and have an outcome expectation of the call. That helps you to see whether you can measure the call based on the what transpired.
So basically, a call to action during the call.
You have to form that as your agenda. Agenda that this is the minimum expectation.
Correct.
In some cases, it is just that meeting the higher stakeholder,
Right.
or a larger team,
Right.
or saying that we will do a POC.
Right.
Yeah. So that is how I would look at the success of a sales call.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And one of the things that I think we have also tried doing this in our sales calls is whenever we try to set the outcome of a particular sales call, we try to see that that outcome could be linked to another meeting.
Exactly.
So what you're
Yeah.
saying,
Right.
meeting some higher up or
or
meeting up for a demo or something like that.
correct.
That keeps the relationship going.
Right.
Keeps the engagement going.
And also give you a measure of what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you plan the sales call and you execute this, then you expect a result, and the outcome has to be, we have to set it. It should not be over expectation or under expectation. That we need to know what we expect out of the sales of the meeting.
Okay. Now, since we are talking about sales calls, I think most of the initial calls, at least the initial discovery calls, happen over a Zoom or maybe a virtual platform. So, do you see that a salesperson should have some other considerations in mind while face-to-face calls are different and Zoom calls are different? So, do you
Right.
think that there are some additional considerations to be kept in mind?
Yeah. So Zoom calls or online meetings are very critical these days, and one of the advantages, you have the full attention of the customer or the prospect. Now, one of the things we don't do very well is to set an agenda for the call.
Okay.
So in this case, it will be a precise agenda, and you tailor make the presentation based on the agenda and the pre-call research you've done.
Okay.
It is more important in the Zoom call because it's less of physical interaction, right?
Okay.
So you don't open your laptop and do the standard company pitch. You should be able to tailor make that to the, or suit it to the customer's your expectation of the customer's requirement.
Right.
And of course, other things like hygiene factors, like showing up on time and being very professional, those still stands.
Would you like to share some experience as to some call that went wrong for you?
I have seen a salesperson who basically went and started a presentation and had read out an agenda, and it was in a major bank here. So all the stakeholders sitting in the meeting, and he or she made a, okay, here this is what we are going to discuss, right? 10 points, about, and the customer said, no, that's not what I had in mind.
Okay.
So it all goes back to that research, setting the agenda, pre-call research.
Right.
So yeah, if you don't show up there with a lot of resources, you came with your pre-sales guy, your architect, and the customer has got a senior people there. But if you didn't, expectation was not set correctly, that's the wrong sales call. This is an experience, personal experience. Yeah.
It is very important to have the right expectations set on
Correct.
the table for
Agenda,
both
both the parties. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, George, let me give you an interesting scenario. I think this will be common for many startups. Startups are always vying for enterprise customers in the traditional enterprise tech world. So, what should be the best practices for startups trying to land some specific opportunities and projects with enterprise customers?
Right. I think for a startup, it's important to have the logos. That's the primary requirement. And once, especially when you're very focused and you understand the industry you're playing in, and if an industry leader, you have opportunity there. I would say that we should innovatively look at things, ways, means to get that deal done. Offer a discount based on saying you be my reference, you
Okay.
take my reference calls, be a do a case study. There are ways and means to do that. So it is important to land the deal because for a startup, the primary strategy is landing and expanding. I'll give an example. So in an e-commerce giant, okay, they were doing a mega sale and they're doing a pilot project, okay, and we had a lot of issues, okay, but the company stood by the customer. I mean, my team worked overnight to get the things set up. The thing is, during the mega sale, we were the only vendor to be called and landed a multi-million-dollar project.
Oh.
So, I mean, getting more new logos, especially they're industry leader in that category you're looking at, you're targeting. I think it's very important that you make sure the management is behind you to get that logo in place.
Okay, wonderful. In your opinion and in your experience so far, and especially if you look at the last 5, 7 years, or even at the last 2, 3 years, how long is the sales cycle of enterprise tech products in your experience?
It depends, depends on the complexity. Also, you can it could be anything from 1 month to a year, right? It could be. But I've seen in the cloud world today, people can spin up and spin down, and the process itself can be faster. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the cloud world, I've seen the sales cycles are coming down. So you have to be more alert. But having said that, yeah, this could be depending on the complexity, strategic importance of the project. It could be, and you have to go for the long haul.
This has been a very enjoyable and insightful conversation with you. I think there are many more questions that we want your insights on, but we have limited time on our, especially your hands. So I would like to finish this conversation with one last question. That question is, what would be your advice to either budding sales professionals or sales professionals who have been in this space, especially in the world of enterprise tech sales?
So for salespeople, the fundamental advice is that your relationships are your key. That's your biggest asset, your Rolodex network. So nurture them, keep in touch with them. So when you going for a new job or going for a promotion, or I think the one of the most important things customers, the companies look at is, do you have the contacts, relationships, and that is something you should be very focused on building the Rolodex network and nurturing them, and stand by them on their when they have issues, right? Solve their problems, and be a trusted advisor. The big sounding words, but that is how they value you. They're not valuing you for anything else but your competence and your problem solving thing. And please do a little more aggressive on when opportunities, and do the challenges stage strategy.
Okay.
I mean, don't be afraid to confront the customer if you think that what he's doing is wrong. But do it in a nice, polite way. But please do be aggressive on that front. Uh, and end of the day, you have to as you said, motivation is very important. So be always motivated. You dress up, you show up, okay, and be you be the man of the hour. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And don't lose any deal. If you follow these processes, you will win.
Wonderful. On that wonderful parting note, I would like to thank you, George, for having spent the time and in enlightening us with these wonderful insights.
My pleasure, Sandeep.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for having me on
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this conversation about tech sales. We covered the broader sales discovery process, and we tried to cover very interesting, nuanced aspects of the sales process, right from lead generation to pre-sales call research, to closing the deal, to demos. We discussed a lot of interesting aspects that salespeople in startups and enterprises face. I hope that this session was very insightful for you. Until next time, this is Sandeep Sharma, your host for the Wiser Talk, signing off. Thank you so much.